They thought she was powerless. In broad daylight, two officers mocked and humiliated a single black mother in front of her child. People watched, some even recording, but no one stepped forward. The mother stayed silent, her eyes cold, her hands steady. The officers smirked, convinced they held all the power. But they didn't know this woman wasn't just any ordinary mother. She was the very person the city relied on to deliver justice. She was an FBI agent, and their arrogance was about to cost them dearly. But let me tell you how this all started. Maya Johnson was a hard-working single mother who bore the world's weight. To most people in the neighborhood, she looked like an ordinary woman struggling to balance life and responsibility. She walked her little boy to the park every morning before heading to work. The park was their safe place, a few minutes of peace before the day's chaos. Maya knew what it felt like to be judged. As a black woman raising a child alone, she had faced whispers, stares, and the quiet prejudice that hid behind polite smiles. But no one around her knew that she carried a badge that could silence any room. She worked as an undercover FBI agent, dedicated to exposing corruption and protecting those who couldn't defend themselves. She sat on a park bench that warm afternoon while her son played. The laughter of children filled the air. Mothers chatted nearby. Everything felt calm, until two uniformed police officers appeared. At first, Maya didn't pay much attention. But within moments, the atmosphere shifted. The officers' eyes locked on her. Their steps slowed, and their smirks told her that trouble was coming. This moment would turn a peaceful day into a public humiliation. Eventually into a lesson those officers would never forget. The officers approached slowly, their voices loud enough for everyone in the park to hear. One of them tilted his head, smirking, and asked Maya why she was sitting there doing nothing. His tone carried arrogance, not curiosity. Parents turned their heads. Children paused mid-play, the atmosphere growing tense. Maya answered calmly, saying she was watching her son, but her composure seemed to irritate them. They pressed harder, accusing her of loitering, of taking up space where she didn't belong. Her son ran toward her, sensing something was wrong, but one officer stepped before him, blocking his way. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some people pulled out their phones, recording quietly, unwilling to interfere but eager to capture the scene. Maya's heart tightened, not from fear but from anger. She had spent years fighting for justice in secret. Yet here she was, experiencing the prejudice she had sworn to dismantle. Then the situation escalated. One officer accused her of resisting authority when she hadn't moved. He reached out, grabbed her arm, and with a cruel grin slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the park. Gasps filled the air, her child screamed, and the crowd froze in shock. The officers laughed, acting like they had just put a woman in her place. They didn't realize that the slap wasn't just a physical blow, it was the trigger that would unleash a truth they weren't ready to face. But that wasn't the shocking part. The real shock came only minutes later, when Maya finally revealed who she truly was. The crowd stood frozen, phones still recording, children clinging to their mothers. Maya didn't shout, didn't cry. Instead, she slowly stood up, her face still stinging from the slap. Her calmness unsettled the officers, who expected tears and fear. She reached into her handbag with steady hands. The officers instantly stiffened, one moving his hand toward his weapon. But what she pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a black leather wallet, one every law enforcement officer in the country knew too well. The crowd gasped as she flipped it open, revealing a gold badge glinting under the sunlight. FBI, the officers' smirks vanished. Their laughter died in their throats. Maya's voice cut through the silence, low and commanding. "You just assaulted a federal agent." Murmurs spread through the park like wildfire. Phones zoomed in on the badge, recording every second. The two officers exchanged a look, panic flooding their faces. Suddenly they weren't in control anymore. They weren't the ones humiliating a single mother. They were the ones about to be exposed. Maya took a step closer, her child clutching her hand. She looked the officers directly in the eyes, her calm composure now sharper than steel. "Every person here," she said, motioning to the crowd, "is a witness. Every phone is evidence. And you just wrote the end of your careers with one mistake." The park was silent. The once arrogant officers now looked small, their authority crumbling before the woman they thought they could intimidate. This was the moment everything turned against them. Within hours, the video from the park went viral. News stations replayed the footage on every channel. Social media exploded with outrage, demanding accountability. The faces of the two officers who had mocked and slapped Maya were everywhere, no longer symbols of authority, but of corruption and disgrace. An internal investigation began immediately. With overwhelming evidence, both officers were suspended, then dismissed. Their arrogance had not only cost them their badges, but also their dignity. For Maya, it wasn't about revenge. As she walked her son home that evening, she held his hand tightly. He looked up at her with wide, proud eyes. "Mom," he whispered, "you didn't even fight them." "But you still won," she smiled softly. "Justice doesn't always need anger. Sometimes it only needs truth." Once a place of humiliation, the park became a place of change. Parents who once stayed silent now teach their children the importance of respect. Strangers who had recorded the incident learned that silence can be powerful when it shines light on injustice. Maya returned to her undercover work the next week, but the world saw her differently now. She wasn't just a single black mother. She proved that no prejudice could silence dignity, truth, and respect. Power is not in a badge, a uniform, or a title. True power is standing firm, staying calm, and letting justice reveal itself. If you believe that respect should never depend on race, gender, or status, hit subscribe and ask yourself, what would you have done if you were in that park?